Good day everyone, my name is Lord Laken Garcia I, and I am going to report the history, philosophy, and objectives of imprisonment and the development of prisons. Discussions. Sing Sing Prison. This is the picture of the Sing Sing Prison. The Sing Sing Prison also offers these programs: alcohol and substance abuse treatment programs. This will help the inmates to have control for their alcoholic abuse. Anger management programs. This will also help the inmates in managing their temper. Educational vocational programs. This will help the inmates to develop their skills and to help the community. Family development programs. This is useful for inmates who are parents or they have families. Guidance and counseling services. This will help the inmates in order to have proper guidance, and this will also help them to have a better library and law library services. This will help the inmates to learn more about the laws and policies. Recreational programs. This will help them to bond with each other and to bond with other inmates and to create a sportsmanship. Religious services. This will help them to have better values in life and to create a good moral. Sex offender treatment programs. Some inmates are sex offenders, and these will help them to overcome their um, desires, to commit such crimes. Temporary release programs. This will also help the inmates to breathe and to have a comfort zone for their families. Trauma programs. Some inmates are traumatized by their criminal acts, and this program will help them overcome their fear. Transitional services programs. This will also help the inmates to transition from being a prisoner to a worker. Veteran services. This will help them develop discipline. Volunteer services and programs will also help them to have a good expression from the community. Now let's go back to the Sing Sing prison, or it is also known as a Sing Sing Correctional Facility. It is a maximum security prison that is located in Ossining, New York. The state of New York, they appropriated 20,100 in order to purchase a 1,000-acre site in Hudson River in 1825. 100 incarcerated men were transported from the Auburn, New York prison to a new site in the town of Mount Pleasant, or it is the original name of the Sing Sing. Sing Sing Prison on the Hudson River at Ossining, New York. It is originally known as Mount Pleasant, as said to the previous slide, and it was created in order for the village of Sing Sing. It was created on the village of Sing Sing on the east bank of Hudson River, 30 miles or 48 kilometers north in New York. This is the picture. It had 800 cells during the initial facility, and it rose during the 19th century, and it resulted from more constructions, and the four-story complex became a 6 stories, and eventually it housed over 1,600 inmates. One of the notable visitors was Alexis de Tocqueville, and he was also the author of The Democracy in America. He and Gustave de Beaumont were amazed at the total subjugation under which prisoners worked. Linz resigned as warden of Sing Sing in 1830 and returned in Auburn in 1838. And despite his record na nakapatay siya, I mean, ang iyang punishment is nag-result to a death sa Osaka prisoner is he was rehired again in Sing Sing prison in 1843. This is Captain Elam Lins. He was born on 1784 in Litchfield, Connecticut, and he died on 1855. He created the Auburn system, which consisted of congregate labor during the day and isolation at night, and it started in 1821, and he was a warden of Sing Sing prison from 1825 to 1830. Whippings and floggings were pretty common punishments at Sing Sing, and the most common one is the cat o' nine tails, which is a cruel whipping contraption whose lashes were often tipped with metal barbs, and it was abolished during the 1848. This is the picture of a whipping, and this is for floggings, and this is the picture of the cat o' nine tails. Moreover, Linz was warden. Inmates were expected to stop making any noise, no, which included talking, and electric chair was present during the 1891, and the Sing Sing prison became notorious for its executions. Even though the electric chair was constructed, almost all the executions were within the state were carried out at Sing Sing until 1963, and the infamous death chair was transferred to the Greenhaven prison. This is the electric chair. The electric chair. So let's learn more about the electric chair. It is a chair in which criminals sentenced to death are executed by electrocution. It is once the most widely used method of execution in the United States. Electrocution is a method of execution where the condemned person is subjected to a heavy charge of electric current, and usually the typical electrocution lasts for about 2 minutes. Seeking for a humane method of execution than hanging, they built the electric chair in 1888, and the first inmate to be executed was William Kemmler in 1890. The Greenhaven Prison. This is the Greenhaven Prison. This is also known as the Greenhaven Correctional Facility and is located in Storeville, New York. It is a maximum security prison that houses only adult males. The capacity for this prison stands around 2,200. It cooperates the correctional industries programs which can allow inmates to work in an upholstery shop and manufacturing furniture. Inmates are offered a chance to earn an adult basic education (GED) and can even earn an associate's and bachelor's degree. And the Greenhaven Correctional Facility also has vocational courses, and these are barbering, computer technologies and repair, custodial and building maintenance, electrical, printing, painting, and small engine repair. And moreover, the Greenhaven substance abuse treatment courses and programs like Alternatives to Violence are available also and can create a positive change in an inmate's life. And let's go back again to the Sing Sing. Sing Sing was also the site of reforms that affected the national penal system. Reformer Thomas Mott Osborne, who developed his penology theories while voluntarily incarcerated for a year at Auburn, he served as Sing Sing's warden in 1914, 15, and 1916. During his tenure, the psychological work with inmates started. More reforms were instituted under Lewis Edward Laws, who served as warden from 1920 to 1941. This is Mr. Thomas Mott Osborne. He was born on September 23, 1859 and died on October 20, 1926. He was an American penologist whose inauguration of self-help programs for prisoners through mutual welfare leagues functioned as a model for the humanitarian programs of later penologists. And he was a warden during, the as again in 1914, 15, and 16. Sing Sing prison cell. This is a cell from Sing Sing. In 1901, the residents of Sing Sing village changed its name to Usining because they wanted to distance, if not disassociate, the town from the notorious prison. And in 1970, it was changed and for the same reason ang Jabod. And let's go to Auburn State Prison. This is the Auburn State Prison. It is located in Auburn, New York, and it started in 1816 and established a disciplinary and administrative system based on silence, corporal punishment, and congregate labor. And the Auburn became the model for most prisons throughout the United States. In the early 19th century, many Americans believed that industrialization and dramatic demographic, economic and political upheavals had conspired against the traditional controls with which families, church, and community. They saw that crime as the product of social chaos, and their solution was to create penitentiary, which is a institutional for reforming offenders and ultimately restoring them to the uh, society. The Auburn usually used congregate cells, and in 1821 Warden William Brittain borrowed the concept of solitary cells and from the so-called Pennsylvania system. He designed a unique five-tiered cell block of two rows of single placed back-to-back in the center of the building. This pattern of small inside cell blocks was later adopted by most of the state prisons in the United States, and a hidden passageway with small openings surrounded the work area, that can allow the inspectors and visitors to surreptitiously monitor the inmates. And briefly, in 1821 to 25, they implemented a three-level classification system. Minor offenders labored in workshops during the day and retired to separate cells at night. And to those serious offenders, they alternated their days between solitary confinement and congregate work under it. And the governor of New York terminated the classification system and the experiment solitary confinement after some numerous suicides, instances of mental illness, and attempted escapes. All inmates worked in congregate shops by day, returning to individual cells at night, and then the females, however, was first committed in Auburn in 1825, and they were relegated to an attic and were excluded from regular work and exercise. In order to assure that inmates did not corrupt one another, Elma Lins enforced a quasi-military routine or absolute silence, strict discipline, and economic productivity. The head-shaven inmates were dressed to strip clothing, and they were tasked to do the lockstep formation. The chaplain was only occasional the only occasional visitor, and letters were banned. Also, floggings and other corporal punishment enforced the rules. It was thought that such regimentations was necessary to refrain the rebellious nature of the offenders and also to maintain the silence. Unfortunately, overcrowding eventually made the silence system unenforceable, and Auburn's system of discipline deteriorated into corrupt and lax routine of harsh punishments. The spirit of reform withered, and contract labor was no longer profitable after the Civil War. Despite the demise of the ideal system, now the Auburn was still the model for almost a century. Unlike Auburn and Sing Sing, the Pennsylvania Eastern Penitentiary 1829 was intended to keep convicts separate even as they worked, and it's located on Cherry Hill on the outskirts of Philadelphia Eastern. It represented one of the most imposing and expensive architectural achievements in the United States up to now, and it contained innovations such as running water and flush toilets in the cells, and all the cells, although Beaumont and Tocqueville found it uncontestable that this perfect isolation secures the prisoner from all the fatal contamination. They were favored the more cost-effective Auburn plan, which seemed more likely to enable states to profit from convict labor. This is Gustave de Beaumont. He was a French magistrate and also a prison reformer, and was born on February 6, 1802, and died on February 22, 1866. He was the 19th century French statesman when he received a commission from the King Franz Louis, and he inspected the prisons from the French government. Beaumont and his friends and noted historian Alexis sailed to the United States in 1831, where they spent 9 months inspecting American prisons, and during the time they were finished to their studies, they published a report entitled "On the Penitentiary System in the United States and its Application to France." This is Alexis de Tocqueville. He was born on July 29, 1805, and died on April 16, 1859. He was a political scientist, historian, and politician, and is best known for Democracy in America, Volume 4. The Auburn System. It is a penal method of the 19th century in which prisoners worked during the day and were kept in solitary confinement at night, which enforced silence at all times. So, again, the Auburn prison, this is the Auburn system, which is more likely they enforce silence. The silence system was enforced and evolved during the 1820s. Now, and it is an alternative to and modification of the Pennsylvania system of solitary confinement. And later innovation at Auburn were again the lockstep, and the lockstep is a marching in single file, placing the right hand on the shoulder of the man ahead and facing toward the guard. Stripped suit 2-foot extensions of the wall between cells, and special seating arrangements at meal were all designed to ensure the strict silence. So, in order for the inmates to remain silent, they were tasked to do the lockstep. The Auburn and Pennsylvania systems were both based on a belief that criminal habits were learned from and reinforced by other criminals. The Pennsylvania system. This is the Pennsylvania system. It is a penal method based on the principle that solitary confinement fosters penitence and it encourages reforms. So, as a different siya sa kuan for the two other systems, because this is a this is not a harsher system. The Eastern State Penitentiary on Cherry Hill in Philadelphia applied the so-called separate philosophy in 1829. The Pennsylvania system spread up until it predominated the European unions, and the critics in the United States argued that it was too expensive, mahal ko na siya kayo, and the Pennsylvania system was superseded in the United States by the Owen system. Here are the different types of criminal punishment. Incapacitation. It seeks to prevent future crime by physically moving criminals away from the society, making them incapable. So in this punishment, the inmates are incapable and their freedom were taken from them. Next is deterrence. The goal of deterrence is to persuade citizens and possible offenders or reoffenders to conform the rules of law. There are four types of deterrence according to Myth and Blue, and these are specific deterrence. It analyzes how effective a punishment on an individual's future behavior. General deterrence looks to understand how individual punishment can deter others from doing crimes. Marginal deterrence. It seeks to unite how effective different types of punishment are, either specific or general. Last is the partial deterrence, which refers to situations where the threat of penalty has some deterrent value even when someone engages in illegal actions. Next is the retribution. It prevents crime by giving victims or society a certain sense of satisfaction. So usually in this punishment, uh, you, regardless of your age or your stand, your punishment is equal to the crime that you have committed. Last is the rehabilitation. It focuses on helping criminals and prisoners overcome the boundaries which led them to commit criminal acts. And the in this punishment, this is the less harsher out of the four because this will help the inmates to train themselves and so that they could be sent back to the society again. Restoration. It is for the offender to create direct amends to both the victim and community in which the crime was committed. During the process of restoration, victims initiate a process in which both they and the offender meet to share their feelings and concerns. And next is the personalities behind correctional institutions. First one is Mr. Cesar Bacaria. In full, Cesar Bonesana Marchis de Becari and he was born on March 15, 1738 and died on November 28, 1724 and was an Italian criminologist and economist whose De Deliti e del Pin, or in English translation G.A. Faber Crimes and Punishment 1880 was a celebrated volume. Next is Cesar Lombroso. He was born on November 6 in Verona, 1835 and died on October 19, 1909. He is known as the father of modern criminology, and he is also the founder of the Italian school of positivist criminology. Next is William the Conqueror. He was born on 1028 and died on September 9, 1087, and he was the mightiest noble in France, and which he is the reason why the course of England's history changed during his conquest of that country. Next is Enrico Ferri. He was born on February 25, 1856, and died on April 12, 1929. He first worked as a lecturer and later as a professor of criminal law, and he is also a student of Cesar Lombroso. He focused on social and economic influence on the criminal and crime rates in majority. Clifford Shaw or Clifford Robe Shaw. He was born on 1895 and died on 1957. He was an American sociologist and criminologist, and was a major figure in the Chicago School of Sociology in the 1930s and 1940s, and is considered to be one of the most influential figures in American criminology. And that's all of my report. Thank you, and once again, good day.